What's up, family? Um, Gotta make a name for y'all. Before this video gets uploaded, y'all are gonna see my very first video. Clap for me. Clap for me. So this series is going to be called. I don't really know yet, but when we find a name, we'll find a name. But basically, I'm just going to talk about the things or the controversies or kind of just things that I don't like about certain mangas or series I have read or just manga in general. So we all know the great and almighty, in heavy, heavy quotation marks, fan service. Now, I personally, my opinions on fan service have changed. At one point, I used to be not care. I don't care about fan service. Fan service doesn't deter me from an anime. The first anime fan service really deterred me from was Kill la Kill. It was mainly because of the age, despite the fact of what the reason and the theme and the meaning behind that whole anime was. Kill la Kill still kind of deterred me. The heavy fan service. But at one point I used to not care about it. I used to be like, man, whatever. This is normal anime shit. But then as times kind of grew and grew and grew, and I'm not saying just because of the times, it's also because if y'all don't, for people who probably don't know, but for majority of people who probably are going to stumble upon this channel, stumble upon this video, a lot of anime, a lot of the main characters are age kept 17 when it comes down to the women, right? So a lot of the fan service for anybody who's older than 18, and even if you're younger, I still feel like you should not be okay with it. A lot of the fan service in anime is kind of, dare I say, predatory. Okay. And I feel like this is a big issue. I do understand that a lot of the fan service, or a lot of the reason why the fan service is the way it is because of like age of consent laws and everything like that over there in Japan. But I'm not gonna sit here and use that as an excuse to say it's right or and it's okay. I do feel like I understand where part of it is like, oh well, these, a lot of anime is geared towards teenagers. A lot of the settings for a lot of animes are high school. But I feel like you can make that shit hit even if it's like in college. Like, I'm not gonna lie, Tokyo Ghoul, even though motherfuckers hated the anime, the fact that they were going to college or in college, I still felt as if, even when I was younger, because when I first watched Tokyo Ghoul, I was like, shit. It was like one of my, not first anime, but like one of my first anime outside of like Dragon Ball Z and Yu-Gi-Oh! And shit like that. So I was probably around like 13, 14 the first time I stumbled upon Tokyo Ghoul. But it, I still related to it, even though I was still in like middle school, entering high school and shit like that. Like, I still related to this shit. Now Tokyo Ghoul didn't have like crazy fan service, obviously, or any really, from how far I got in anime until I kind of dropped it. But what me saying that basically means that, fan service doesn't have to, it doesn't really have to be in anime to make an anime great. Take Kaiju number 8 for example. Great, amazing anime. No fucking fan service from what I've seen. None. Amazing though. Great. Now maybe the manga could have been different. I am going to pick up the manga, but so far from the anime, none. So with that being said, finally let's get into it. 5 minutes, damn near 5 minutes in. My gripes with Soul Eater, I guess, and the controversy. So if y'all don't know, Soul Eater, made by the amazing man who made Fire Force. I love Fire Force. I'm reading Soul Eater because I never really could finish the anime, and usually a lot of times when I can't finish animes, that is probably because maybe it's the pacing or anything like that. But recently I've been reading Soul Eater, the manga, and loved it. Now, this is my issues with the first volume. I'm only talking about the first volume. Remember that, guys. The first volume. So I'm not talking about the second, third, however, to the ending. just the first volume. And since the topic of this video is fan service, you obviously know what we're going to talk about. Fan service. So, y'all might be like, fan service? What? Now, if you haven't read Soul Eater, this may trigger a lot of you. It's going to trigger you anyway if you're a decent human being. But the fan service in Soul Eater is insane. Now, I'm not talking about Blair, the cat witch, because I think she's. Oh, I haven't actually. I got my handy dandy phone right here, so let's check this because I don't want to sit here and I have my other phone right here because I made some notes or just a little thing that I'm gonna read y'all. But let's say how old is Blair in Soul Eater? I spelled her name wrong by the way. Well, she doesn't have a confirmed age, and she turns into a cat. But I figured that she wasn't probably going to have a confirmed age or be under the age of probably 17 anyway. Now when it's older people, to each their own. You know, if you love fan service, if you love, you know, hentai manga or very very heavy sex manga, and I'm not gonna sit here and say I haven't read manga that has sex. I've read Sweat and Soap. I believe Sweat and Soap is also one of the greatest. I wouldn't say greatest, but it's well, to me at least, one of the greatest romance, like adult romance mangas. I definitely believe if you're above the age of 18, you should, or even 18, like you should read Sweat and Soap. It's a good read. It's a funny read. It's an emotional read. It's a heartwarming read. It's a great read. Now the sex scenes may throw you off, but you know, back to what I'm saying. So, Soul Eater, the fan service for Volume 1 was crazy. It kind of threw me. There was a couple of times where I caught myself just stopping, halting my reading because I was like, why was this a decision to put here? So, and I'm not going to show the scenes for, you know, like to not trigger anybody if it does trigger anyone. But if you've read the manga, or you can probably go, like I said, I dumbed it down to the first volume so you know exactly. There's one scene where Maka is jumping, right? And it's a little bit of pain. Now, you may, like, if you've never read Soul Eater, you may be like, whoa, why is this an issue? Why is this an issue? Maka's 14. Maka's 14. Okay. And then there was another scene where they're going to it's spoilers, where they're going to fight Sid because he got turned into a zombie, and Sid throws down his gravestone, and Maka does this crazy ass acrobatic, you know, dodge, Spider-Man like almost, right? Full. If I'm not mistaken, that also showed the penny, or it could have had the dress covering over it, but I'm pretty sure it showed penny also. And I was just, I was like, what? You know, the pose was cool. You could have covered it up with the maybe the wind like blowing over the bottom half of her dress, you know, covering that up. Why are we doing this? We're not going to get into we're going to hit on the later half, right? And then the third case. Now, well, I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna continue saying what I'm gonna say. Now, the third case, Black Star. So they were trying to get information out of Sid to find where Frankenstein was, the guy that turned him into a zombie and everything like that. So, you know, he's like, you'll never get information out of me. I'm not like that. I'm all this. Black Star pulls up Tsubaki's, you know, her little ninja outfit, you know. And wouldn't have been an issue, you know, gooners, if you're a gooner, you know, goon. Wouldn't have been an issue if Tsubaki wasn't 17. You know, that's crazy. Why are we doing this? And to my knowledge, going into it, I thought Tsubaki was at least 18 or 19. And, you know, they turned into weapons, so I'm not really questioning. I'm like, okay, he has a older weapon, you know, with like, I mean, whatever, right? He's a high school kid with an older weapon, you know. But then I looked up her age because, you know, like I said, the fan service for Maki was insane. So I'm like, okay, how old are most of these people? Which I knew Maki by her looks. She was obviously a child. That is not like, And I don't want y'all getting the wrong impression, like, oh, I would have been okay with this fan service if they were of age. No, I'm not gonna say I would have been okay. I wouldn't have been okay with it. It would have been something that I probably wouldn't have batted an eye to. But like I said, excessive fan service does also throw me off with certain shit. It's kind of like if you're just throwing it in my face all the time, and it takes away from the story for me. It's kind of like, what the fuck. Now, this is gonna sound a little bit, I guess, hypocritical on my end, but I need y'all to understand where I'm coming from because I will say the things that didn't deter me from this, the things that outweigh those cons for fan service, and it is the same thing for Fire Force. Not gonna lie to you, it's the same thing for Fire Force. Was the characters in the story. I love the way the characters connected with each other. I love the little comedic elements where like they were trying to, do a soul synergy or like connect their wavelengths, and Soul and Maki fucked up and they started going at it with each other and yelling at each other and everything like that. And those parts right there kind of reared me back in. Those parts right there kind of made me be like, okay, you know what? I can bypass this shit. Like, that shit is hella weird. And I'm not going to sit here and defend it. I'm not going to sit here and say that, just forget it. Because if you cannot read something because something makes you uncomfortable, that is 100% fine and justifiable. Never let anybody make you feel like you're a pussy or you're weak or anything because you can't read something that makes you feel uncomfortable. Now, I hate to throw it off as a, well, that's just anime. But in a way, it is, right? In a way, it is just anime with the weirdoness. And the reason why I'm calling this out is because this is something that I'm going to explain in later videos. I want to, get big enough with my love for manga to where, like, maybe I make a push to mangekis, to anybody who wants to make a manga, whatever. They're like, bro, we don't, you can up the age a little bit, if you want to make shit more comfortable, because I feel like with people getting more open minded about things that they consume, they're going to be looking at things like this. They're going to be looking at things like this, and I'm not going to say that this is going to determine their sales or anything, because, like I said, like, if you've been watching anime for years or reading manga for years, as a manga reader or anime watcher, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, this is just anime. Like, this is how anime is, just how manga is. But it still needs to be addressed despite our love for these things, right? You can love something, and then that love you have for something is doing something wrong. Like, right? When you have a best friend and your best friend or your lover or whatever is doing something wrong, just because you love them, you shouldn't stay quiet. You should still speak up about it and tell them, like, hey, that was kind of messed up. And that is essentially what I'm doing. Now, with certain stories, sometimes the fan service, I understand, may be relevant, quote unquote. And I'll never really say relevant because I do not believe that any form of fan service is relevant. But, like I wrote on my notes, for example, Boys Abyss. So I'm going to read what I had typed out. It's very small, not really long, and there might be some points on here that I later on may not agree with. So I'm not going to sit here and say, like, hey guys, I 100% agree with these things. But like I said, take Boys Abyss for example. The age gap makes sense, and when I say age gap, I'm saying because of the fan service and the way in the age gap, like I talked about how like the age is weird, right? The age gap makes sense in the story because he was groomed and manipulated from the volumes I have read. So far, I have read three volumes. From the volumes I've read. While I don't agree with showing the sex scenes, which were just fan service, to be honest, because what is the point? Same thing with Sword and Soap. Love Sword and Soap to death, but the point of the sex scene is really just fan service. It's not really that important. Yeah, you can make the sex scenes or the fan service feel monumental to the story, but really when you look at it from a third person perspective and then take away the whole story from it, it's really just for the gooners. And it could have probably hit harder, at least on the grooming and manipulation side, if it was heavily implied. Which means if the grooming and like the grooming, the sexual grooming, as a reader, to me at least, could have hit harder if it was heavily implied. If the main character was showing signs that like he was groomed without having to see the scenes.
To elaborate further on what I mean by this, I mean without seeing the scenes because the main character in Boys Biz is 17. I do not think that they should have showed sex scenes between a 17-year-old and an older person to show his grooming or his manipulation. I do not think that there was really a point. And as a reader, it could have hit harder if the 17-year-old kid was mentally going through it and you could see the mental stress or the numbness that he goes through that I'll later talk about in this video. And then you having to see the fan service. So that's what I mean.
Now, with seeing the scenes, of course, obviously, you can tell that he was groomed, he was coerced into these things, but still, due to his, decline in mental health and his view of life. If you haven't read Boys Abyss, I do recommend a read, but it is a tough read, and by tough read, I mean emotionally tough read. So make sure you're in the right headspace before you read it. But it could have hit harder as a reader. If it was heavily implied rather than shown. But then compare that to a 14-year-old getting her skirt lifted up again. Not saying that either of the manga should have done this, but the fan service in Soul Eater is crazy and is one gripe that I have with the manga. And basically, like I said, well, Boys Abyss whole thing. I'm not gonna spoil it, but Boys Abyss whole thing is you're following the main character, 17-year-old high school kid who lives in a town that is known for no evolution. You're not gonna grow if you stay in this town. But then you see that it's not just the town holding him back; it's the people he's around. You see the 17-year-old boy who's in high school who is getting sexually groomed, who's getting manipulated, who is getting trauma dumped on from his older peers, teachers, his friends, the girl he meets. Like, I'm not gonna try to spoil everything for y'all if y'all do decide to go read it. But you are seeing a 17-year-old who is mentally drained, and you see his emotions fluctuate between him caring and him not caring. There are things that happens to him that like he normally should have a reaction to, and he clearly doesn't because of what he's been manipulated to think. How he's just coasting because the only way for him to survive or accept or live is to be numb to these things and to just fall into this cycle that people are basically putting the guise of this is help. Hey, I can help you. I can help you. Really, I'm not helping you. I'm helping myself. I'm just telling you I'm helping you to benefit me. So in this instance, the age gap part of the I wouldn't want to consider the age gap part of fan service, but in a way it kind of is. Like in a sick, twisted way that these motherfuckers make it, it kind of is. It makes sense, and I'm not saying like, oh, they could like a 20-year-old wouldn't fall for that, but I feel like it being a teenager hits harder because maybe some people in real life, if you have gotten groomed or any SA has happened to you, which I am sorry, but this story may relate or can hit harder, or even if it hasn't happened to you, it can hit harder because it's like, damn, like this is really just a kid. This is a kid. Now, granted, the genres of Boys Abyss and Soul Eater are different, but the fan service in Soul Eater is crazy. The age of these characters getting their not necessarily actual private parts, but things that are private to a child, to a person, getting shown is insane. Now that, like I said, that is not making me be like, man, fuck Soul Eater. Because like I said, what brought me back into Soul Eater, what reared me back into the story was the character interactions, the personalities, the story, the action. But I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm oblivious to what the I want to say darker side, but the side that's just like ill, you know. Um, and this video really is essentially, like I said, to bring awareness to fan service, but also for y'all to have free reign of thought, free opinion, right? I'm not going to deter you or tell you you shouldn't read something because of fan service. Because like I said, if you're like me, where it's like, okay, but there's things that can reel you back in, then by all means continue reading. I'm going to continue reading Soul Eater, unless, in my opinion, the fan service gets so out of hand where I'm just like, I cannot fucking, like I said, I dropped Kill la Kill for that reason. I could not, because you're suit up, titties jiggling. You feel me? Like crazy, right? So, but like I said, it couldn't be contradictory because a lot of people are going to point out, well, you're able to read Soul Eater, and I'm not gonna lie, at least for me, I couldn't at the time. Just Kill la Kill just wasn't doing it for me, and the story couldn't drag me in because of how often it happened. Like literally, it felt like every episode I watched, it was just boom, 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 boom. And I know, like I said, in Fire Force that does happen, but not all the time. I will admit there are times where I literally forgot that Fire Force even like had hella fan service or had fan service in general. So I'm not gonna sit here. I'm sorry if y'all see smoke. That's crazy. I'm nobody smoking. It's fucking a humidifier in here. But yeah, tell me what are y'all takes on fan service. And this is a judgment-free zone, so I'm not gonna judge anybody. The only time I'm going to judge you, okay. I said judgment-free with asterisks, heavy asterisks, in parentheses. If you start defending it's okay for 14-year-old, it's okay because it's a cartoon, well, cartoons is crazy, but it's okay because it's art, it's not a real kid. Like all that, like if you start saying all that, buddy, you might need to be put on a list, okay? But yeah, let me know. Now as y'all know, before I end, I did make a name for my shit, Manga Sensei. You could just call me Sensei. You would call me MS. That's fine. I haven't thought of a name for y'all. I don't know if I want to. I'm kind of feeling. I don't know if I want to call y'all my students because I know, for me at least, my brain. Obviously students aren't just having to be children. You can be a student of anything at any age. But I know that if I call y'all my students and people stumble upon this shit, they're probably going to be like, "Ugh, he just wants to cater to, and it's like, brother, no." But at the same time, it has a little ring to it. And I feel like sitting there because like students, a sensei or teacher, technically, whatever you want to call it, that's a small community. A classroom in some form or fashion is a small community. But then at the same time, why I'm kind of like, I don't know if I want to refer to y'all as students, is because it's like, y'all are, we're going to have talks from anime to this to that, and it's not like you're necessarily learning anything. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't really know. But y'all think of some community names. But if y'all don't think of any, fine with me. I'll probably end up settling and calling y'all students, right? But yeah, I love you guys. Like I said before, first video, like, comment, share, subscribe is always optional. Now we're always gonna have gonna have these gripe videos after probably, like I said, I don't know what I'm gonna call this series yet, but we're gonna have these probably after every volume. I'm gonna read volume 2. Am I gonna make another video today? Probably, but I gotta upload the first one first, so I'm gonna go ahead, edit that, and boom. But yeah, like I said, like, comment, share, subscribe, always optional. I love you guys. Stay watching anime, stay reading manga. Peace.